Oh, welcome to the Sharpe Way Show. So happy to have you with me this evening. A little bit past, you know what? Not past, right at 7 p.m. Look at me on time. See, once in a while I can be on time. Not usually, but I can be on time sometimes, and I am today. And I am happy to be on time because I have today, not only do I have what I think is a very special topic that I want to bring up, but I have on a very special guest who I think can give us some serious insight into a lot of the stuff that a lot of us are concerned about. I know we are concerned about it. I know I am. And that is the idea of the US economy. That's the idea of the cryptocurrency reserve that we've heard so much about. And the gentleman I'm going to bring on he is a personal friend of mine. He's a guy who's an economist. He was the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party in 2024. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Maat. How are you, sir?
That's probably a bit more than I deserve. It is good to be with you, Larry. The most important piece of that is I appreciated you calling me a personal friend. We'll see if that survives the next hour and a half. I'm very happy to be in your show, and I particularly want to thank you for exchanging texts with me about an hour ago, giving me permission to wear a jacket and tie.
There we go. Yes, and I went out of my way to wear a regular shirt. So yes, absolutely. You can look as cool as you want. You can outlook me. It's funny. Sometimes I have people on the show that look way better than me.
I couldn't outlook you with a tuxedo, Larry. So let's jump into the content.
Okay, I like that. So I want to go right into an important piece. If you want to follow what Mike is doing, follow him on Twitter /X on Mike Termat _. And it's, if you're listening, that's TERMAAT _. Follow him there. See what he's doing. He's a lot of good stuff. He's doing a bunch of podcasts because he's got the info, which I'm going to grab from him right now. Look, a lot of people think that crypto is just a scam. You hear that all the time. It's just a scam. It's bad. It's not real. But then you have the opposite side of people. Even RFK Jr. was talking about it. He was talking about having a partial crypto reserve to help the Fed and blah, blah, blah. People now are talking about crypto for reserve. Help us, Mike. Is this real or is this not real? What is this?
Crypto is real. Crypto is something that provides a service, as all money does, to the extent to which it's able to perform the functions of money. It will be accepted as an important service. I don't think that we know a whole bunch of things we need to know to answer some of your questions. We don't yet know what will be the real important characteristics of crypto to decide which one is going to emerge as a winner, for example. We don't know if it's going to be speed, how many transactions it can handle. We don't know whether it's going to be the complexity of the contracts that it can handle, whether it's going to be the versatility in terms of the decentralized applications it can handle. We don't know whether it's going to be privacy versus centralization and control, right? I know you got a lot of libertarians in your audience, like me and like you, who care about privacy very much. We might rank that as the number one characteristic that we care about in deciding which crypto ought to, help our society in the future. So there's any number, and by the way, the cost, right? The cost of running these systems, as a lot of your audience knows, and probably a lot of your audience doesn't pay much attention to, there are a number of cryptocurrencies that run on blockchains that use what we call proof of stake versus proof of work or proof of history, which the latter can be extremely expensive, time consuming, energy consuming, in order to run
but let me ask what I think
transaction.
You brought all this up here. If we have a crypto reserve, does it function, or should it function, either one, as like the Fed, meaning it's a separate entity, or should it be like part of government, like, run by the Defense Department or whatever is the appropriate department, right? Should it be separate? Should it be part of the government? Should the government run it? To me, I worry, of course, is this something that the government can just, whenever it decides to, plunder during our next war or something, right? Or not?
Right. Well, good for you for worrying about it because, as we all know, governments will plunder what it is that they can plunder. In this particular case, I believe that we're probably going to escape federal government plundering of these markets because of the scale involved. Not knowing which currency is going to emerge as the winner, in order to plunder enough to really control the market, the government would have to do a tremendous amount of plundering, even by its own plunderous standards.
So
For
hold on. Are
example,
you saying then that a good crypto reserve would not be like just Bitcoin or whatever? It would be a plethora of
well, imagine
cryptocurrencies.
exactly. Imagine how dumb we would feel, how dumb any administration would feel if you poured in, say, a few $100 billion at buying up a whole bunch of XYZ currency, right?
Right.
What if you bought a whole bunch of Ethereum and it turned out that, Cardano, because of its technological investment, the way that it runs, its scalability, just blew everything out of the market and turned out to be the
Mm,
currency of choice. And you're sitting there with Ethereum that isn't worth very much in a couple of years. That would be what we would call bad.
right.
And
Right. Right. Right.
and
Right.
and and you have that risk no matter which one you pick. And by the way, it's one of the biggest arguments for the government not doing this at all, because not only can you guess wrong for your own benefit, right? Not only can you make yourself look dumb and lose a lot of money, but you could accidentally or intentionally bias the development of these markets, right? Imagine if you picked a
Sure.
currency that wasn't as good as the better currency, poured a few $100 billion into it, and caused it to win. Now you've got a product that all of the citizenry is stuck using because the federal government is using it and making it difficult either from a functional basis, an interoperability basis, or a regulatory basis, makes it difficult for other currencies to compete. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of us would argue that the government should stay completely out of this. The big
Got
argument
it.
in
Yeah.
favor of the government participating in it, there are some side effects that we should talk about in a moment. But the big reason in favor of it is because you don't want your government caught with its trousers down when it turns out that the US dollar is no longer the big kahuna, and you really wish you were sitting on $1 trillion of your own currency, and you aren't anymore. And we would learn the hard way at that moment. By the way, I don't think that moment is coming, but this is the argument, right? Imagine learning the hard way how much better off your economy is because you've been the issuer of the world's only reserve currency for the last 100 years.
Right.
And all of a sudden that music stops and you're not holding $1 trillion of what it is that is the new reserve currency.
Right.
That would be a bad day.
So then, I mean, I hear you kind of saying maybe we shouldn't do this all bad, but then maybe we should. It could be either. But can we use the cryptocurrency reserve as what RFK had mentioned last year, that plus maybe precious metals, and then somehow phase out the Fed? Is that real, or is that just something that sounded cool? Because it did sound
just
cool.
Something that sounded cool. And it does sound cool. Anything that even rhymes with "and the Fed" sounds good to me. So don't mishear me.
Yes.
It does sound cool, but it doesn't work. The scale isn't there, and the acceptability of the currencies aren't there yet. We don't know which one will emerge. And the big one is just the scale. The Treasury of the United States holds, hundreds of billions of dollars of foreign exchange, reserves of various currencies, a lot of euros, a lot of yen, a lot of British pounds, I think mostly just to make nice, and 50 other currencies, but those are the big ones, right? China holds a couple of $1 trillion, something like $3 trillion just of dollars alone, because they have to. Holding reserves is extremely expensive, right? Currency doesn't pay interest. So you're holding these reserves just for transactional purposes, or because you're making an investment because you're worried about the performance of your own currency. Well, if you're worried about the performance of the US dollar, and there are reasons why you should be concerned, but if you're concerned about that, then there are things that you can do and things that we should talk about that the federal government of the United States should be doing to make the dollar better, more usable, less threatening, less costly, more user-friendly, more trustworthy, more stable, less inflationary.
So let me walk down that road. This is maybe a little bit off topic, but now you're saying that one of my worries has been that we have weaponized the dollar so much that people are getting kind of upset about it. And this is one of my points. You and I discussed this maybe a year or two ago. I was worried about BRICS. And the reason why I was worried about BRICS is my worry was if we weaponize the dollar so much, to your point, people will be afraid of it, won't want to use it. America's going to hammer us, whatever. So let's go get this cool brick thing that the Russians and Chinese are coming up with. And It sounds cool. Let's go use theirs. When I talked to you about that before, you were like, nah, whatever. You weren't that interested in it. Has your opinion changed, or is it still not that big of a deal?
No, it has not changed. It's not that big of a deal. I would not bet on BRICS as a group of nations. I would not bet on BRICS in terms of a new currency, and for a couple of different reasons. One is 70% of BRICS is China.
Okay.
That means a couple of different things. It means 70% of those economies stink. The Chinese economy is in trouble in the long run, and it's for all of the reasons why a libertarian would hope and expect it to be in trouble. Centralized decision-making doesn't work, and you can hide bullshit for a certain period of time, but eventually it is what it is. You know, when you're stuck with empty office buildings and empty apartment buildings, and you've made bad investments in 20th century technology around the world, that is going to come home to roost. And that's just being honest about it. The Chinese economy is not something that you should bet on. And it is, of course, the economy that backs up the issuance of a currency. And this is, not ironically, the reason why the Chinese government holds $3 trillion worth of dollars. If I were the Chinese government, I'd be betting on the US dollar too.
Okay.
If BRICS does issue a new currency, and I believe it won't, I would not be optimistic about its performance because of the underlying economies making bad decisions in the long run. But I believe it won't issue a new currency in the future because China is so dominant, and China has a particular interest in the performance of its own currency.
Sure.
In other words, I think that a lot of folks in the Chinese government, not that I'm on the phone with these people and I'm very bad at reading minds, but if I had to read the tea leaves, I think that they have an interest in promoting the acceptance of their own currency, right? Renminbi, the yuan, around the world, and they would view BRICS as a competitor to that. And I
hadn't even thought of that, because they're not going to, in this case, they're not going to replace their own currency with the BRIC, so it becomes a competing currency. Oh, okay. So in my head, it was like going to become the euro, right? Like,
well, it could, but you know, to pull that off, you had to convince the Germans to give up the Deutschmark, right?
Yep.
And if I were Germany, having gone through last year's recession, I think I would have said that euro thing was a bad idea. It caused us to feel obliged to bail out Greece. It kept us from deflating our way out of a recession sooner, you know, which would have saved us a lot of heartache. And we envy the Brits for having maintained their own currency.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to grab a couple comments. You've got some fans in the audience, so let me go that. Shelly says, Mike Tremont's a great guest. I agree. Yes.
The jury's still out on that one. What's the next one?
P says, jacket and tie, I think he means tie, not tile, look good on you. There we go.
Well, thank you. I sleep in this.
It's true. I've seen it. Yes. That Liberty lady says, I voted for Chase and Mike. There we go. As did I, by the way. I also voted for Chase and Mike. I did. So yes.
So did I.
All true. Yeah. I'm glad you did, Mike. That would have been weird if you hadn't.
Several times.
Well, I'm in New York, so I had dead people vote for you too. So it's how that works in my state. We do whatever we want. I want to fall back to some of the crypto stuff. A couple people are asking about it. Mike Voss says crypto is a scam, but good news is Canada backed down electric surcharge. I don't know how that's connected, but a lot of people think crypto
it may
is
not
a
be
scam.
Directly connected, but it's indirectly connected. I don't think that crypto is a scam in the sense that if it provides a service, then it's then it's not really a scam. I mean, any product or service could be a scam if you don't want it, right? Look, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, and yet, if it were invested, people love it. They think it's a good service. I might argue that they're being let down because it's mismanaged and a dopey idea, but I'm not sure I would call it that's debatable. It depends on what you call a scam, right? I mean, if they're upfront about it, this is how it works. It's a Ponzi scheme. We're telling you up front it's a Ponzi scheme. It's all based on taxation of future generations. I don't know if you can call that a scam. So it's the same thing. You've got these meme-based coins, right? You got the meme coins that are traded on blockchain technology. Do you call that a scam? They're not lying to you. You can buy a piece of art if you want. You can buy a piece of Hunter Biden art. Are you being scammed? You're being shown the art. If you hate it, don't buy it. If you go into this thinking that there's absolutely no value except in the likelihood of bringing in some even dumber schmuck after you, then this is probably not a good idea. On the other hand, if you believe that one of these currencies, maybe multiple, maybe all of these currencies will eventually play an important role in our economy by providing service to those who engage in transactions and conduct what we are quickly calling smart contracts in the smart economy, right?
Right.
And therefore it pays to hold these currencies and to use them. And it's harder to do business in the world without them. Then it's not a scam. Right?
Well, there we
then
go.
It's a good idea.
I like that.
It's a good service. It's same thing with the U.S. dollar. Is the U.S. is the fiat dollar a scam? Well, kind of, yeah, in the sense that you can't live without it, and someone else controls it.
And if we stop bombing people, it might go away. So we got to keep bombing people. I'm just saying it might go away.
Okay, but that's the motivation for the scam. Let's focus on the scam itself for a moment. It's not really a scam in the sense that what it is that's going on. You're being issued a currency. They're promising up front to devalue it by at least 2% per year. And you can look at history and know that it's, typically devalued between 1% and 5% every year. You know that going in. You can make up your mind how much of this stuff to hold, but it does provide us. There's no getting around the fact that it does provide a service.
It does. You're right. 100%.
It does. And in relative terms, relative to other currencies around the world, ours actually provides better service and this is hard to get your brain around, less of a crappy scam than other currencies.
You're not wrong. I'm with you. Let me grab a super chat if I could. Duke of Hex, thank you for the $5, my friend. He says, Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell, and Walter Williams like how Mike thinks. I think that's true. Sadly, they've all passed away. No, I think Thomas Sowell's still around with us.
Yeah, Thomas Sowell is still around, but he doesn't know who I am. So that's asking a lot. I think the best way to restructure that in a more truthful statement is that I am a big fan of those three guys.
I like that. That's great. Rick, thank you for being a member. He says, a lot of crypto is a scam, but Bitcoin has persisted in way too long for it to be a scam. I've heard this before. I've heard a lot of people tell me that crypto is crypto, whatever, but Bitcoin is different. And Bitcoin's different because, and this is what they tell me, I'm no expert. I'm telling you what I've heard, that Bitcoin's different because Bitcoin is the only one that doesn't have a CEO. It's not centralized. It can't be controlled, blah, blah, blah. That's what I hear. Now, I don't know if that's true. I also heard something else. I heard someone tell me once, never trust a cryptocurrency that has a CEO. That's what I've heard. So please take it from there, Mike.
Well, there are reasons to be concerned about centralization. You might like some of the other cryptos. Have a look at XRP that uses a brand new technology in terms of what they call consensus, which is to say that various nodes on the blockchain have to agree in order to verify a transaction. And it does not rely on the gobs of energy required for proof of work. So it's very creative, very fast, very high tech. Naturally, the Biden administration's SEC hated it. I think it'll take off now that the Trump SEC is going to lay off of some of the regulation of these exchanges and hopefully of these blockchains. I'd be optimistic. And some of the other chains as well. There is a lot of decentralization there. So I'm agreeing, but Bitcoin isn't the only one, I guess is what I would say.
Oh, got it. Okay. You have another fan. Kate says, thank you for being a member, Kate. Kate says, I bet Larry has a favorite suit that he couldn't part with. Love Matt's look. It's Mike, but that's fine. I'll take Matt. She loves your look either way. So yes.
Larry, I happen to know that Larry has an array of sport coats in which he looks good and has made me jealous in person on no fewer than 3 different occasions.
There we go. There we go. Michael doesn't agree with you. Michael says XRP is not a true crypto. It is distributed ledger tech. So he thinks you're
that's
off
right.
on that one.
As a technical matter, I would agree with that. But I think that we're going to have to broaden the definition of this word crypto, or else we're going to get into.
Okay.
I mean, he is right, and maybe he'd be a good guest to explain the differences. But we may have to broaden what it is that we've called crypto. I guess is how I would put that.
Okay. So when we talk, my next worry, which is kind of similar to the same idea with the Fed idea, is if we decide that we want to have this crypto reserve, if we do decide yes, does that mean it's the same as or would be part of some way a CBDC?
No. But that is another important issue. And just to wrap up what we were talking about before, these reserves that we're talking about, the reserve of Bitcoin at the moment is whatever was laying around in the government, right?
Right.
And the executive order said, we're not going to be buying anymore. Right. Obviously, that's an order that can be reversed. People change their mind all the time. But at the moment, it's $17 billion.
Okay.
I'm not here to try to convince anyone that $17 billion isn't a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much money, right? You're not going to move markets off of it. And I think some people were deluding themselves a touch by driving up the prices of these currencies when they thought the Trump administration was going to issue an executive order that said that we are going to buy these currencies, because I really don't believe there is a world in which the administration was going to buy so much that they were going to affect these markets in an important way. Whereas there are important signals that were sent by issuing this executive order, like the SEC should be regulating these differently.
Right.
If this is truly a reserve, I got to get my fingers in your camera. If this is really a reserve, then what does that mean? That means it's not like a security. It's like a currency. It's not.
Correct.
And should be regulated differently. That's an important signal. And so I would suggest to currency fans, crypto fans who are holding these products, as I do, full disclosure, we need to learn to take yes for an answer. Sometimes you get yes for an answer. Yes, the administration is giving you a favorable outlook on crypto, a favorable regulatory environment, is agreeing to even put a little bit of money behind its mouth. That's probably more than it's holding in Japanese yen.
Mm-hmm.
And the Japanese are not complaining that we don't hold enough. I think this is what yes looks like, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Let me take on this super chat. Thank you for the $1.99 piece. So what's the lowdown? Should I be buying Bitcoin? Well,
yes, you should be buying crypto. I can't tell you which one.
I'm going to say yes to Bitcoin. I buy Bitcoin. I think you should buy Bitcoin. I do. I think you should. That's my personal bet. And obviously, I am by no means any kind of financial guru in any way, shape, or form. But
a lot of folks say 5 or 10% of your retirement portfolio. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
In 100 years, we're going to know this answer.
Yep. So Duke of Hex says, hold on, another $10. Thank you, Duke. The problem with crypto is that it isn't tangible. It requires electrical grid, unlike cash you can carry anywhere. A crypto millionaire is broke when the lights go out.
Absolutely, really, which is why I own crypto and several hundred cans of, baked beans and water.
Well,
okay.
Oh, good. Yes.
So when the zombie apocalypse comes, I've got a couple of shotguns and a couple of rounds, couple hundred rounds, but I own crypto too. So either way this goes, I think I'm hedged a little bit.
But are we really worried about that? And this is my issue, right? I mean, even if there is some kind of unless it's actually a zombie apocalypse, obviously, but if it's a zombie apocalypse, cash won't matter either. Only like gold and stuff and beans. Your baked beans and ammo will be far more valuable than dollars, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So if there really is a zombie apocalypse, but if there isn't a zombie apocalypse, if I get the idea of crypto correctly, and anyone can tell me if I'm wrong here, there's so many computers that are involved, it would have to be the lights go out over the entire planet, right? Like the whole planet, the lights go out, then yes, which is zombie apocalypse, in which case, who cares? But assuming that the lights don't go on the entire planet, wouldn't you still have your crypto in your pocket somehow?
No.
Okay, tell me.
And there are two reasons for that. One is possibly yes. That's a very optimistic view. Possibly yes. But if your password protected code, if the way into your wallet is stored on your computer and you can't get that particular computer online, you could be screwed. And if you can't get online, it doesn't matter that, some kid in Paris knows you have a lot of money because you can't move it.
Got it. Okay, because you can't move it. Okay.
Right. So you're still going out to the garage for the baked beans, sitting there thinking, how am I going to get to my crypto?
Got it. Well, Joel has the right answer. If Nancy Pelosi buys crypto, it's time to buy. Accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, on any number of levels. Number one, she's got to be financially smart because she's worth a whole lot of money more than what she's been paid above the table over the years. And number two,
Absolutely.
We all know that she has access to insider information. So I agree. And by the way, third, and this is a little cringy, so I apologize for bringing up this third reason why I believe that's a true statement. How do I say this politely? Nancy's not looking at the longest time horizon.
Also true.
Okay.
Yes.
So
also true. Yes.
If she's buying, it's not for a 40-year hold. Okay.
Good point. Very good point. Let me look over if I can at Rumble. And Rumble, Joel also says, I'll not understand crypto until I understand what the crypto mining computers are doing to earn crypto. And that's an interesting concept. A lot of people don't know how crypto works, right? They just know, oh, it's this crypto thing that people made, so I guess it's good. They don't get how it has to take energy in some way, shape, or form, right? Yeah. To make the coin or whatever the thing is. It takes some kind of energy. Most people don't get that. And to be forward, most don't even care.
Well, on some level, you don't really need to care any more than, you care how the Fed controls bank reserves and orders the Federal Reserve
Mm,
Bank in New York to enter into financial markets to control the money supply and hit the Fed funds target rate. That all of that is somewhat interesting to certain people, but you can, get through your day without understanding those mechanisms as well.
got it.
How money is created is not unimportant, but it's not necessarily critical for each one of us to understand that.
Good point.
But to your point, Bitcoin, for example, has to be mined. Most
Right.
of what can be mined already has something like, I don't know, 80 or 90%. I think there's only like a million of the last 21 of the 21 million coins that can be mined yet to be mined. It's extremely expensive in terms of the amount of energy and time and computing power and space required to mine a new coin. And then you, of course, are rewarded by holding the coin once
Right.
you're able to mine it.
Right.
Um, but it is not a zero cost process by any means.
So let me make a shift if I could now. And we talked about the idea of weaponizing the dollar, which was a worry of mine. There's a secondary piece, which is it's financial, but it's also foreign policy, but it affects everything. And that is tariffs. Without question, libertarians forever have been anti-tariff. Recently, tariffs have been, according to Trump, the most beautiful word or whatever he said, right? The great word he loves, his favorite word, right? He loves tariffs. Now, to be forward, I want to give Trump credit where credit is due. He has made some threats with tariffs, and some people have backed down, and he's gotten some deals with tariffs. So I want to be clear, he has done some good things with the tariff threat. I am hoping, again, as I don't have any evidence of this, but I am hoping that this is actually his plan. It is just to threaten tariffs, and then people do what he says. He can claim victory and remove tariffs. I am worried that's not true. Where do you stand on this, Mike?
I stand with you. I agree that I don't know, but I do know that he has done what I would characterize as a poor job of communicating where it is going. I don't think that his case, his negotiating position, is enhanced by not effectively communicating. In other words, I believe that his negotiating, assuming that he's trying to get rid of tariffs, and I that is not at all obvious.
Okay.
I think there's a 50% chance that he likes the idea of leaving tariffs in place because he believes that the revenue from the tariffs is sufficient to offset the economic loss, efficiency loss in disrupting markets, right? I
Mm,
think he may well believe that. As a matter of fact, I would say there's a 52% chance he actually believes that. And that's a real shame, both from an ethical standpoint and from an economic efficiency and just bad math, by the way. You're not going to get enough revenue to make up for that. But let's focus on the possibility that this is just a giant negotiating ploy, right? As you and I hope, as
yep.
you and I hope, and could well be the case. Imagine how much better his case would be if he came right out of the box the day after the election and said, I'm going to impose a lot of hard tariffs. Here's why. I want everyone to lower their tariffs. I want to turn the whole world into a giant free trade zone, right? And I'm going to impose reciprocal tariffs to punish everyone who doesn't play ball with us. Maybe triple. You put a 5% tariff on us, we're going to put a 15% tariff on you, and it's going to be broader than the one that you have on us. We're just going to punish those who don't play ball. But the reason we're doing this is to get rid of all the tariffs. And I'm going to start with our good friends in Canada because they're our best friends. We do more trading with Canada than almost anybody else. And we believe that we should have an absolute free trade agreement with Canada. And I'm calling on the Prime Minister, who hates my guts and I hate his guts, but we're going to work together to get a free trade agreement that's really huge, right? The best free trade agreement of all time. And we're going to have electricity and oil going back and forth, and eggs and milk going back and forth. And this is going to be the greatest thing. If that's his message, he could be doing all the things that he's doing now, but the stock market wouldn't have crashed yesterday. Because we would all have this sense that it's in the Canadians' hands, and that the Canadians would have giant incentive to play ball, right?
But what about the opposite piece? Hold on. He does say something that, and we have seen some evidence of this, right? That if he threatens tariffs, it brings jobs back to America. And when we see that, doesn't the average American go, I don't care about free trade. I care that I have a job. I care that the factory in my town exists, right? I don't, free trade. I don't care. What I care about is there's a factory in my town, and my daughter or son can go work there and maybe hopefully one day buy a house. And if people are mad, I don't care. Isn't there an argument for that?
No.
Okay.
That is 19th century thinking.
Oh, okay.
Where we need to begin is recognizing that the unemployment rate is relatively low in the United States, right? It's around 4%. Now, when I was in school several thousand years ago, we thought we couldn't get below 5%, and we have seen unemployment rates below 4%, right? So we should be looking at that 4% rate saying, dang, we're lucky to have such an efficient economy that we get people jobs, and it's not perfect. We're never going to get to only 2% unemployment, I don't think, but we're very lucky to be as efficient in placing people in the job market as we are. And we don't need to create more jobs. We need to create more good jobs. We need to be driving up our income. And you don't do that by building 20th century factories. And if you're the People's Republic of China, knock yourself out. Those people are stuck in the 20th century. I'm hoping that someday they get into the 1990s. I figure they're around the 1980s right now. That is no way to foster economic growth. It's not a matter of jobs anymore. It's a matter of wages, good jobs, higher paying jobs. And that does not come from factories. It comes from high tech. And that comes from investment. And investment comes from around the world through free trade.
So let me go to what I forgot the guy who runs Trump's finances right now. What that guy? He was on CNBC or one of those places, and he basically
said, Treasury Secretary Scott, right?
That guy, yeah. He said, "Oh, don't worry. Now the factories are coming in," and the person interviewing him said, "Yeah, but it's also AI, and there's also all the robots." And if I remember hearing right, there is already today in America. There's a warehouse that exists that's all robots. Like there's not a human being in it. It's just all robots.
Right.
And she said something like that. And he said, "Oh no, it'll be fine because then we're going to need people to repair the robots." Right. That's what he's kind of saying what you're saying. But my worry, and I'm getting to this next part, which is my worry is AI. And why do I say that? If we have AI now, do you need to hire a guy like me to go repair the robot, or does an AI robot repair the other robot? And then you don't even need me for that. Does it come to a point where now we'd rather it be the 20th century? Like, and reason what I bring this up is my degree, by the way, is in anthropology. Why do I say this? Because I studied some of
because you think I'm a monkey, and I get it.
We all are, right? So anyway, there's a story I remember from I think it was the 1990s or 1980s, where there was a company that was trying to help out the people of like northern India or Nepal. And they were building a road. And they went to build the road, and they purposefully did not bring any equipment. Like they didn't bring no equipment. And they were like,
because they
what
had
are you
so
talking
much
about?
labor available.
Yes, they literally wanted to pay the people to by hand build this road. Like they could have brought in tons of equipment, knocked it out way fast. They're like, no. We want to pay these people. We want the labor. Let's take the time to build the road slowly. We don't care. It's totally fine. Is there some of that in the American government now who says, no. Let's go back to the 20th century because we want to give people these jobs.
There
money.
is some of that. It's bad thinking. It's absolutely bad thinking, but there is quite a bit of that. It's no different than all of the other technological revolutions that we have gone through. The internet did not increase the unemployment rate. Automobiles did not increase the unemployment rate. The Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution did not increase the unemployment rate. We had gobs of extra labor stuck in the ag sector until the 19th century, when finally the Industrial Revolution came along and gave everyone an incentive to get with it and get into the new economy. That did mean a whole lot of people migrating into the cities that turned out to be, Dickinsonianly unpleasant. I'll give you that. But, that century was a relatively brief period of restructuring. And we're going to be going through decades and probably centuries in the future where we're going through restructuring. But there is no such thing as, well, we'd be better off if we didn't institute these technologies. These technologies are coming whether we want to or not. They are going to profoundly improve our way of life, even for people like you and me, Larry. In our lifetimes, and our lifetimes will probably be longer because of them, right? So I hope you're enjoying it, because you may not have an exit ramp for a whole long time. Even in our lifetimes, it is going to make a huge difference. If it turns out that we need less labor in the future, if that turns out to be a thing, right? As it has in the past, that will correct in terms of the number of hours that we work and the number of hours that we choose to work, the number of people who choose to work.
Kitty brings it up. Thank you for being a member, Kitty. Kitty says UBI time. And a lot of people are talking about this. This is not since Yang brought it up back in 2020, right? He brought it up. That's when it started to become a big thing. Prior to that, not many people talked about it that much. Once Yang brought it up, everybody's been talking about it, right? And now people are saying, hey, look, Mike, you're wrong on this one. Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to let the robots do a bunch of work, and we're going to take UBI. They're going to make all the money for us, right? And then that money is going to come to us, and we're just going to get UBI. That's how it's going to work. How do you feel? And two parts. Has your mind changed at all on UBI / negative income tax with the increase of AI or not? And how do you feel about it for the future?
No, and no.
Okay.
If you have three more questions, the answer to those are no also. This is a 200-year-old idea that was bad when it started. It was bad in the middle, and it's going to be bad at the end. It will keep coming up. The way this works is, in effect, again, we need to learn to take yes for an answer.
Okay.
You will work. You will play a role in the economy. You'll make more money than you otherwise would have because of AI. We will all be wealthier as an economy because of AI. And we will live off of that wealth.
Here's my worry, though, Mike. Here's my worry on this. And my worry is, in the overall big picture, I think you're correct. But what's been happening in America compared to other places, in America, the wealth gap has gotten worse and worse. That's not true. It's like China and the place. China's still bad, but it's gotten better, right? I mean, it was horrible. Now it's just less horrible, right? So it's actually getting better in many of those countries. But in America, it's not. Like, the wealth gap's getting worse. And my worry is, yes, our GDP goes up. Yes, we get richer as a country. But does that mean that the top 1% get triply rich while the middle class gets kind of the same and the poor gets hammered even worse? That is my worry.
Understand what actually has happened is that the lower class is much, much better off than it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago, 150 years, much, much, much better. Poor people in the United States live better than middle class people in most of the rest of the world. We need to stop apologizing for a misunderstanding of that fact. It is true that wealthy people have done even better in the United States, right? The returns to investment have been ginormous for a variety of reasons. The two big ones are we don't save enough, so what capital we do generate gets rewarded very well. And number two, we generate a lot of technology here, which makes investment really profitable. So yeah, the wealthy have done extremely well, but that has really nothing to do with how well or how poorly people do at the other end of the ladder. It's not true that there's some constant size pie that gets divvied up. It's really a matter of how do you drive up the wage rate for people at the bottom of the scale? And the answer to that is to make labor more productive. And the answer, the way you do that, is more investment, more technology. That's what's going to drive up the wage rate in the medium term and in the long run. And we need to foster that. If you undermine that, you undermine the entire economy, and that will be true. This is not a philosophical matter. That's just how economics works. That'll be true in 100 years from now or 100 years ago.
So let me grab a couple things if I could. First off, guys, if you're liking what you're hearing, then do the right thing. Click the button known as Lima, India, Kilo, Echo. Click that button now. You haven't clicked it. Why do you hate the children? That's all I'm going to say. If you haven't clicked it, you hate children. I don't know why you hate children. They've done nothing to you, but you clearly hate them if you don't click that button. Click it.
We all hate children, Larry.
Well, then click it because you hate them. But either way, click it. I don't really care why you click it because the guy who's paying attention, that guy, his last name is Rhythm. His first name is Al. His middle name is Gore. So when you put it together, that guy is watching this. He controls everything.
Everything.
If you click the like button, he gives this out to other people. But if you don't want to do that, it's okay. Share this, repost this, put it into X, put it into YouTube, put it into a Facebook group. Doesn't matter. Put it someplace. It does matter. Please follow me on Facebook, X, and Rumble. You haven't followed me on X. Again, why do you hate the children? Just go follow me on X. I don't get you. Also, subscribe to me on YouTube if you would. And when you're doing it, make sure you click all notifications. You might say, Larry, I've already subscribed to you. I'm sure many of you have, but YouTube decides for any whatever reason that you're a bot and unsubscribes you. So go back and subscribe and make sure and click all notifications so you know. You can also super chat me as you've seen. Super chat me goes right to the front. If you're watching on Rumble, you can rant me, goes right to the front. Awesome. But more importantly here, become a member. Remember the rule. If you made $10 million this week, you have to be a subscriber. That's how it works. You have to do it. It's the rules. You have to. If not, you don't have to, but I'd like you to. So just keep that as the rules. You must do so if you can. With that in mind, I don't know if you guys have noticed, with that in mind, the man himself has come through. Yet again, I got to find it here. Garrett has come through with 5 gifted Sharpe Way memberships. So guys, grab those. And remember the rule on this. If you made $10 million this week, you may not take one of these memberships. Remember, that's the rule. If you made 10 million, you cannot take the membership. You must buy it. But if you didn't make 10 million, you can take one of Garrett's. It's okay. Please do so if you want to. I don't mind. That's the rules. And we got to play by the rules, guys. That's all I'm saying.
Excellent offer, Larry. Excellent offer.
Yeah, there we go. Juan, thank you for the $5, my friend. COVID proved UBI will fail. I've been in IT for 35 years, and time has proven that new technology creates more jobs than replaces. I think he's on your side, Mike.
Well, he is right. I've known that Juan's a smart guy long time before this, but he is right. That's a really interesting take on it. But we have learned that if people don't have incentives to work, they don't work. And in the long run, I really believe that our economy is going to restructure so that there's less salary, and more piecemeal type of work to create incentives for people to work, and we'll have better technology to better track the value of people's work so that you'll be able to demonstrate that you're worth it getting paid per project.
But 2 points. First off, guys, if you want to follow what Mike's doing, please head over to Twitter/X. Follow him at Mike Termaat _. And if you're listening, Termaat is TERMAAT _ Mike Termaat _. But I got to say, what you're saying sounds mean. It sounds mean. And I mean it seriously, because people are listening and they're going to hear this and they're going to be like, that sounds like Mike just wants to suck the life out of every human being. And now we all have to be like gig workers and keep working for the man. And then the man makes all the money and we're screwed. I feel like that's how it sounds. Am I wrong?
I did not hear that in what I was saying. So, maybe I need to be more careful about the words that I choose, because that doesn't sound like something that I recognize.
Well, the AC says the middle class is pretty much non-existent anymore, right?
That's a matter of semantics. One might take exactly the opposite argument and be just as true, that the middle class is almost the entire economy at this point. There are very few people who cannot make enough money to live on. And there are very few people who make so much money that, you're the one carrying all the tax burden in your village. It really
but hold on. Let me give you some pushback in my state. In New York State, over 50% of people in New York State are literally on Medicaid or Medicare. So that's a huge chunk of people that aren't doing well. I would assume you would agree that if you're on Medicaid or Medicare, that you are not in the middle class.
Medicare means you're over 65.
Yes, correct. And many of them in New York State, as you probably know, are not doing very well. I'm using my state because I know my state, right? This may not be true across the country. I don't know.
A lot of them are not, but that's
doing well.
That's not an indication that they're not. Medicare is there for everyone over 65. I look forward to using it pretty quick here myself in a couple of years. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm either doing well or not doing well. But the truth of the matter is that if you were to define poverty in a global sense, the United States would have very, very little poverty. The object of the game is for us to drive up wages so that people can make enough money, not only to make a good living, but to save and invest so that they can live off of that. That is your UBI of the future, is your ability to retire early, I guess is the way I would put that. That is the UBI. If you were to create a UBI, right? If you were just to give people money to stay home, guess what they would do?
Stay home? I don't know. Tell me.
Yes, they would stay home. In the past, the tests that we have run have been relatively modest amounts that weren't enough to change people's behavior. And then everyone said, well, isn't it nice? People finally had enough money to do this or that. And it is nice. It is lovely. But it has very little impact on real important decision making. What we need to do is find ways to drive up the wage rate. And that means new technologies and increasing investment. And the way that you do that is by getting the government out of two things that are important: international trade markets, right? Because we want investment coming from abroad. And that means we need to be able to sell our stuff to other people, and we need to be able to buy stuff from other people so that we send the dollars abroad and they come back to us in the form of investment. That's number one. And number two, we need to make sure that the government stays out of markets that can inhibit technological investment. If the government gets involved in regulating AI, for example, this might sound mean. I can almost guarantee they'll screw it up, right? I mean, I can't with 100%.
I'm with you on that.
certitude say they'll screw it up, but
I can 100% certitude they'll screw it up.
okay,
Yes,
metaphysical certitude, you're guaranteeing that they would screw it up.
correct. Yes, yes.
That leads to two possibilities. One is that the technology doesn't develop as well as it otherwise would, which can hold back our economic development and cause us not to make the kind of money and strides in our standard of living that we could. But it also means that it could be driven offshore, and that the development of AI takes place someplace else where it's less regulated by the government, or less, at least less stupidly regulated by the government. And that wouldn't do us here in America any good either. So we really need the government to stay out of our way.
I got like three things I want to bring up. One of them is, so far as I see, as we've added technology, I think Juan is correct that it has added more jobs. I think that's accurate. However,
different jobs.
Yes, different. I agree. I think that part is correct. What I've seen, though, is while productivity has gone up with this new technology, salaries and wages for the vast majority of Americans haven't. For what you might call the professional managerial class, the PMC class, right? For the professional managerial class, which is kind of that maybe lower upper class, upper middle class, that type of work, I think their salaries and incomes have increased because of it, because they're managing the new technology, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Those types have, and the people who are physically building stuff still, like the handyman types, those types, and there has gone up. But I feel like everybody else in that middle, if you look at it, they really haven't they haven't seen the benefits of the technology in wages. They've seen it in other forms of life. I agree.
I think you're right. There's a huge piece of our economy, that's hourly waged. The wage has only barely kept up with inflation over the past 40 years. Slight increases. And in terms of purchasing power, it's done quite well because we have new technologies. You can buy a phone that you didn't be able to use to buy, but nothing like what we wish. And this is to your point, what we wish it were. And this is what I would characterize as the result of a transition period. We're transitioning out of the 20th century. We're transitioning into the end of the 21st century eventually. And this whole period between, 1996 and the internet and 2036, when we finally have AI ubiquitously affecting how, every industry is run. This is a transition period when a lot of people don't do as well as other people. I think you're absolutely right about that. But that is the nature of it. Every technology you see, that happens. Okay. Whenever it's introduced, you've got people working in a sector that gets left behind. And what we need to do is make sure that we don't prolong those adjustments. I would point to Detroit as a leading example, where we protected automobiles manufactured here in the United States far too long, and then the bubble burst, and a city of almost 2 million people just devolved into a city a third or a quarter that size, and people lost tremendous amounts of value in their homes and real estate and
so let me
livelihood.
Touch that piece now, because Mike asked this question. He says, Larry and Mike Maat, do you believe the U.S. entered a recession August 2022? I don't know why I picked that date, but that's his date. Or now, will current policy extend the recession or make depression? Will crypto prevent this? And this is my worry. I've heard this from so many people that there's an everything bubble, there's a stock market bubble, there's a real estate bubble, and it's all going to crash this year. I've heard that, and I heard that last year, by the way. I heard that same thing last year, and now I'm hearing it this year. Are we in a recession? I feel like, and again, I have no data. This is just my feels. So take that for whatever you want. I feel like Mike is correct that we've been in a recession for a couple years. I don't know if it's August 22, but I feel like my feels tell me that we've been in a recession for a while. I don't know if I have no data on this. But Mike, what do you think? And
we did go through a couple of recessions during the Biden administration that they, relabeled other things. They didn't want to use the R word, so they were keeping it from us. But the data clearly show that, in a couple of different instances, we had a couple of consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. So definitionally, we had recessions. We are not in a recession right now. Data will come out, I guess, in 8 weeks or so, that will show the first quarter had 1%, 1.5% growth, which is not enough, but not what you would really call a recession. We do run a huge risk of entering a recession in the next few weeks that won't really show up for the next few months. And that's because consumers are going to feel a wealth effect from the stock market downturn. Investors are extremely sheepish about making big plays without knowing the international trade environment, without knowing the tax environment, without knowing how the consumer is going to react over the next.
So hold on, I want to get to this. Is this going to be, because if you spend like 10 minutes on the internet looking for the world is ending videos, you will find them. And they will tell you that literally this is worse. This is worse than 2008.
No.
How bad's this going to be?
No. It's going to be a garden variety recession. It's being tripped by mixed signals in terms of policy and adjustments due to long-term policy, short-term adjustments, as well as the introduction of new technologies, all the things that we've been talking about. A lot of worry, a lot of withheld investment, withheld consumption. That all adds up to a fairly mild recession. The fundamentals of our economy are very, very strong. We have, good employment markets. We're still the place to be in terms of investment, in terms of regulatory environment, in terms of technological innovation.
And the piece is, Kitty brings up a valid point I want to bring up here. She says, 2008 effed us. That's true. Younger folks. And then COVID did it again. Also true.
Yep.
The vast majority have never had a chance as adults to gain a footing. I don't understand how older generations are unaware of how bad we have it. I think she has a valid point in that.
Yes.
If you came up, particularly if you were like between 18 and 22 in 2008, particularly if you're that age, you got hammered coming out of either high school or college. Then you started to get yourself back up again from that hammering. And then here comes 2 years of stupid lockdowns, right? That wrecks that too. And then I think so many people feel like, and this is emotions, but I think it matters when it comes to voting, when it comes to wanting policies. Yep. And it's, hey, you guys lied to me. You owe me because you defrauded me. You defrauded me. You told me if I played by the rules, I did the right thing, that I'd be okay. And when you screwed me in 2008, I got around that. And then you hammered me again. You owe me. And I look, that's not me, obviously. I'm a little bit older. So that wasn't me, obviously. But I could feel that. I could see that feeling. Am I wrong?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I would hasten to add that it hammered a lot of retirees too.
Okay.
If your retirement was riding on a 401k in 2007, or if it was riding on, you having a couple of investment properties, right? The government really let you down. That was in no small part, a policy instigated recession.
Yeah.
and a lot of people were angry and should have been. I'm not suggesting it wasn't bad if you were young. I'm just pointing out I think it was bad for a lot of people who had to ride that out in terms of their asset holdings. Remember, the number of bankruptcies and foreclosures was enormous going through 08, 09, all the way into 10, even 11. And that wasn't young people. You know, those were 40-year-olds who had worked a long time to be able to buy a house and lost all of their equity.
I didn't get hammered myself until 2010. 10 is when I crashed. I felt it in 9. 10 is when it all came crashing on me.
Absolutely. My family too. We were riding out a very difficult period. And you know, you're trying to save money to get the kids through college, and you thought you had it figured out. You know, the plan was to, you know, you buy this apartment and you rent it out and you work hard to fix it up, and that's where all the equity gets developed, and all of a sudden it ain't worth crap. And now it's like, I don't know, sweetheart, if you're going to be able to go to college, right? I mean, all of a sudden everything changes. Now that's sort of an upper middle class problem. So I'm not looking for a boohoo. I'm just saying there are tens of millions of people in that category who got absolutely hammered in the markets for real estate and for their 401k. There are people who are working today longer, right? Because their savings were significantly diminished, either in terms of real estate or in terms of other asset markets through that period. Yes, we did go into another recession during the Biden administration, and I do fear that we may be going into another recession now, 50-50. We can avoid it, but this would be a policy instigated recession.
So let me then go to what I think this goes back to us wanting something, right? And this goes back to policy, and it's kind of like UBI, but hear me out. They talked in the past about, well, we're going to end the war in Ukraine and we're going to get all these mineral rights, right? And people go, that sounds great. Okay, sounds good. And I'm not against mineral rights. Good, get mineral rights. And I'm not against it. Awesome, get mineral rights. The worry that I think most people go to is the same thing with the idea of technology. Great, we get these mineral rights. I'm not getting a cut of those minerals, right? It's going to be some big corporation or some military industrial complex or something like that. They're going to get it all. Will some Americans get jobs? Yes, some Americans will get jobs. That's true.
Yeah, whatever happened to Halliburton anyway?
There we go. Yeah, exactly, right? They're going to be right over, whatever, all that stuff. They're all going to be there, right, doing all that stuff. What about the idea of some type of dividend that goes to the people, right? So, and I bring this up because if you remember, there was a talk about a DOGE dividend. The idea that DOGE would come in, save a bunch of money, right? That was the plan. He said 2 trillion. God, I hope he's right. I can't imagine 2 trillion, but whatever. I'll take $1 trillion.
It's not. Yeah. Okay.
But
don't even go there.
Yeah, but anyway, I'll take whatever
you give. It's nothing that's going to begin with a T.
There we go. Okay, that's what I figured. But whatever the dollars is, let me give you the concept. The concept is whatever the dollars they save, they take 80% and pay off the debt, and they take 20% and they write a check to the American people. Each adult gets whatever is the dollars, right? Similar to what like Alaska does every year with their, their oil reserve, whatever they have. I forgot how it works.
Right.
They give a little check to everybody every year.
Yep.
I'm saying if we don't do UBI, Kitty's pissed off. She thinks she's owed something. I get it. I understand her feelings. She's not alone. To your point, seniors probably feel like they're owed something for being screwed. Why don't we get the DOGE dividend and or the mineral rights dividend or the whatever dividend? And is that the same or worse than UBI? Is that realistic?
It's not that much money. So in that sense, I don't think you can really call it a UBI, and it's not going to persist into the future. So I think it's just not that big a deal. It's more like the, Biden checks or the Trump checks before that.
They're stimmy checks.
What?
They're stimulus checks. They're just stimmy checks.
Yes, stimmy checks. I missed that word. Yes.
Yes.
They're stimulus checks. And you know, that's fine, right? But I don't think that we should pretend that that's really any different than paying off debt. You know, if they're not going to pay off debt with it, you're still paying taxes in the future to pay off the debt. You know, it comes back to there's no free lunch, right? Now, there is a redistribution element. You know, maybe as we know, the vast majority of taxes in the United States are paid by, 2% of the people in the United States. Just they're paid by the rich people. And so if you're trying to reduce debt, what you're really doing is reducing the tax burden on rich people. So I get why that doesn't have the same zing, right? And so maybe there's a redistribution element by sending everyone stimmy checks that feels better. And I don't know that I have a fundamental problem with that economically.
Stimmy checks do feel good. I mean, they do.
Stimmy but from an ethical point of view,
they just feel great.
From an ethical point of view, I think that you've got to think real hard about whether you want your government to be in the business of redistribution, even when it feels good.
Good point. Well, Mike says, send me the stimmy. He wants it. He wants a brand new pair of shoes. He wants the stimmy. I get it.
I get it.
Like, nope. She's like all against all bailouts. Ryan's like, cut the S out of spending. So we got some people. Andrew's like, just all my taxes.
Evil comes from spending, and that's what we should be talking about. It's not a matter of what to do with the revenue. It's a matter of cutting the spending. Whether you send the revenue out as stimmy or pay down the debt or lower tax, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's a secondary conversation. The real problem, the root of all evil, is that the government spends too much money. The vast majority of that is in entitlements, but big categories include defense expenditure. So
yeah,
we need to find ways of reducing all of that, or we will be in trouble. And I don't mean like we're all going to be grumpy. I mean, the federal government of the United States is going to fail before we get to the middle of this century, unless we figure out how to do something about that. And if that happens, no amount of, have we invested in crypto? Have we the good education policy? It's all down the toilet. We're looking at a very bad depression, and for a long, long, long time.
See, you brought up something that I am worried about, and I brought this up before. I try to look into my crystal ball. And what I see is China in the next 5-10 years, whatever the number is, going into what I would say like a permanent stagflation. Permanent stagflation, just like Japan's in permanent stagflation.
Yes.
I see Germany, permanent stagflation. Just going into that permanently. That's
quite possible. Less likely than Japan and China, but a total possibility.
Yes. I think the wild card in my head is India. I think India's got a shot at going into stagflation or even collapsing or exploding and being great. That's my wild card bet in my view. And I think the UK is screwed no matter what. I think they are just going down. There is no hope for that nation. I think they're finished.
I think you're on to something.
Last piece. To your point, I am worried America will also go into permanent stagflation.
Yeah, I'm worried too. I'm very, very worried. And I would characterize the United States as the wild card. If we get into trouble and we face economic stagnation, and I don't think we will because of AI and emerging technologies, but if we were to face growth stagnation, it could really hold back the entire world, and everyone would be in a real pickle, a real problem. I think what we really need to avoid is one of these big economies failing. I had thought, I have guessed a lot of things wrong in my time. We should do a conversation, unrecorded hour-long conversation about all the guesses I have made that have not turned out to be true. But I thought that when a nation like Greece, and I didn't think it was going to be Greece, by the way, got into trouble, that it would teach the world a lesson.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it did a little bit. It said, you know, you better have a rich uncle like Germany, right? But
Yes.
they did, and they survived. And I think the world learned the wrong lesson,
The wrong lesson. Yes.
which is that you can be an idiot and fail to restructure your government, and you can limp along, you will survive. And I worry that we're not going to learn that lesson until it's too late, and there's going to be a big economy that goes down. I'm particularly afraid it's going to be us, but to your point, there are plenty of other contenders to beat us to it. Someone goes down that's a really big economy and throws the entire world into a bad not recession, and one that takes, you know, is measured in decades, not years. That's what it is that we should be worried about. I also worry that, particularly in the case of China, that it triggers some bad behavior.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Some desperate people do desperate things.
Desperate people do desperate things. You don't have to look any further than Moscow to see an example there. And I think that there are plenty of candidates for that, but I do think that Beijing is the leading possibility, because I don't trust their ethics. I don't trust the methods by which they make decisions. They have an enormous and growing military capability, particularly in terms of technology. They're building bases around the world, and they make very bad economic decisions. So I think they're the leading contender for misbehavior, and that could drag a lot of people into what we used to call war. I know we don't use the W word anymore, but it could drag us into a conflict that would be very, very expensive.
I'm worried because they're already working on stimmy checks. They're thinking about stimmy checks now, so I'm already worried about them. Let me grab a super chat real fast. Two good facts. Thank you for the $5. How about we teach children that we will in a market economy, I think how to do well in a market economy. To survive in it successfully, you must provide something of value to the marketplace.
That is exactly right. We need to get out of this idea. The most fundamental thing to understand about economics is that you do not get ahead by taking something of value from someone else. But a lot of people believe that you do. You don't have to be a Marxist to believe this, but a lot of people just fundamentally believe you get ahead by getting something that someone else would have otherwise gotten. And it's not true. The economy works by you getting ahead by creating value that other people want, and they pay you for it. And by creating value, you expand the economy, right? And if people understood this, they would less resent other people's success and less covet other people's revenue, particularly from the government. And that fundamentally would change the way that we vote and what it is that we expect from the government.
That Liberty lady, thank you for being a member. She says, my house is on a strict budget right now, so no frivolous spending. The U.S. needs to act like they're on a budget, like a low-income household. But isn't that literally the opposite of what we think? Doesn't the average person, the average economist or whatever, the average establishment guru that I will watch on whatever, MSNBC or CNN or Fox, don't they say literally the opposite of what she's saying? We're in trouble now, so spend more. That's the time to spend more. Isn't that what they're all saying?
A lot of people do say that, and they're wrong. We need to create incentives to allow people to make money off of investments, create a good environment, not only for investment, but for the development of technologies, in order to drive up the wage rate and get the government out of not only the regulatory business and the taxation business, but most importantly, the spend business, to keep the dollars in our pocket so that we can spend them and create that circulation that drives up GDP, creates savings, and allows for investment. We need to foster free trade so that we can attract investment from abroad. That's how to foster economic growth.
Ryan agrees with you. Thanks for being a member, Ryan. He says, totally agree with Mike on if we don't get spending under control, the federal government will fail. And if this is your point, Mike, if America is the government that fails, that's a decades-long depression, right?
It is. I also worry. I don't like to be melodramatic, but you inspire me, Larry. I actually worry that it's worse than that, in the sense that, you know, we've been leading up to, in some sense, of philosophical showdown. Oops, you there?
Okay. Yeah, I'm here.
I'll wait to come back.
I'm here. I can see you. You're not there?
Okay, good.
Yeah,
we've been leading up to a philosophical showdown between socialism and what we might loosely call capitalism or freedom, the right to make decisions for ourselves. And I think that that's coming to a head in terms of a failed government at some point, and in terms of reaching a flashpoint where we can really reach a tremendous amount of economic growth if we do this right. In other words, it could go in two very, very different directions. And I believe in some places it'll go in one direction, and some places it'll go another. And this manifests in the arguments you see out of people like Vladimir Putin, who argues democracy doesn't work, hasn't worked, and most importantly, can't work, won't work, will never succeed. And the only way to succeed is to have an authoritarian strongman who can make decisions more smartly than a silly democracy. And I worry.
Was it Plato's philosopher king? Is that right? Right.
There you go. We can all debate on how authoritarian Plato would have been, or his appointee. But we know how authoritarian Putin is, right? And I worry that if that government fails, that you and I worry someone will, we don't know which one. But if a big government fails, and it is a democracy, that people like Putin will point and say, I told you so. I told you that democracy doesn't, can't, won't, will never work because people make bad decisions. And that will be a problem that's not just, a decade or two of depression, but could really set back economic development for generations.
Agreed. And I think we're going to ask for it. And I'm bringing up what Kitty said, because Kitty has a lot of valid points. She's saying they literally bleed it out into the rest of the planet on BS, but they can't give us basic income. Sounds dubious. Her point being, and I see it from her point of view, right? I live in New York City. I see the wealth gap in my city night and day, right? It's so obvious I see it, right? I see people I talk about the idea of people who want Medicare for all. And I always say they really want Medicare for y'all, not for all, because they're going they're going to keep their private doctors, right? You get the Medicare. I'm going to my private doctor because I got tons of money, right? So that's how they're looking at life. And if you're living in a city like mine, if you live in a more rural area, or maybe in a certain suburbs, maybe you don't see it as much, right? Maybe you have to go on TikTok or on Instagram to see it or something. But if you're in my city, you can see it every day. It goes to a point where you go, to her point, they're throwing it away on buying their third, Bugatti or whatever, right? And I can't pay my rent. I'm struggling to, I can't go out and have Kentucky Fried Chicken this week because it's too expensive. I got to cook my chicken at home. I want to get some KFC. And this guy's buying his third Bugatti. What's going on here? And I feel like this is a valid point, which I'm bringing this up because it goes to your point. Now, at one point, I start saying, I don't care about democracy. I don't care. I don't care if I have democracy. I don't care if Putin's right. I don't care if Putin's wrong. All I care about is I want some of that. And if strong man, whoever comes in goes, don't worry, give me the power and I'll give you some of that. People go, deal, I'll take it. I don't care. And I think one of the best examples I can say is, you look at Russia in 1917 and they had a horrible, horrible environment. And here come the communists and go, we got you. We will kill the rich. Great. We hate the rich. Wonderful. Will you give us food? Well, we'll kill the rich. but we were like, no. We don't know about the food part. I don't know about the food. But the killing the rich, we got that down. We will kill them. And
that's
some of
in
you
their
too.
wheelhouse.
Yeah, they got that. We'll kill some of you too. But we will kill the rich. And they were like, you know what? I'll take it. And that's what they did. And my worry is that we're in a world, to your point, that not only will the strong man won't take over, that the strong man will be welcomed in with open arms to give me some of what they got. And I don't care if Putin's right.
We all know that, 20th century despots and fascists and authoritarians, they were voted in typically. They were begged in, asked in, right?
Yes.
Political takeovers, not in every case, but typically. So I do believe that this is a big, big concern, and it means that we need to do a good job of making every adjustment possible to drive up wages. That means all the things that we talked about to make investment more productive. It also means stopping inflation and improving education.
But we agreed that what's happened so far, and I think you and I agree it's obviously policy issues, but besides the point, the average person doesn't understand policy issues, right? But what they see is the upper middle class and lower upper class has done fairly well. The lower class, the working poor are in trouble. The very poor, to your point, are actually doing better, right? The very poor are doing better than they've done in 100 years ago.
Sure.
But that other group is in trouble. What makes somebody, some group, some environment, some community, some nation, some company try to get wages up when they are incentivized to keep them as low as possible, right? If I want to pay my people as low as I can, it's a massive expense. Why in the world would I want to pay them more? What incentivizes us?
Yeah. We need to get into a situation where you have to, right?
Okay. Got
it. And that means, it means a couple of different things. It means making labor so productive that you need some of that.
Okay.
And I think at the moment we have a whole lot of labor that is not as effectively educated as it needs to be to compete in this century, right? We're passing out 20th century diplomas for a 21st century world.
100% true.
If you get out of high school these days, you are not ready to be employed. Let's be honest. You are not ready to be employed. I would go so far as to say, if you get a college degree, you're typically not really ready to be employed.
True.
A lot of people might be ready to go to professional school, but you typically don't learn a whole lot in college that's going to make you all that valuable. And the same thing for high school. We need to turn the corner. I think it's a great thing that up to how many 30 states or so have some form of school choice programs. That's a big deal. There's huge momentum there. Eventually, and I don't know how long this is going to be, but over the next 20 years, that will manifest in better programming, not just a change in.
I'm gonna say something that is actually gonna be crazy for some people. I think one of the things we're doing wrong is this is a government policy issue that most of this is, but we are controlling unions when we should not control them.
Yes.
Because if we would leave them alone, but support them right through law, right, and not letting them hammer them, obviously, but you'd have different unions that would support people better and would not focus 90% of the time on the 10% of knuckleheads. They would focus 9% of the time on the 90% of good union workers, and they'd support them better and stronger, number one. There'd be multiple unions, to your point, unions that provide good workers that people want and would pay for, which now unions often just protect the bad workers because of the way the system works. But the second piece, we have pushed away co-ops and worker owned companies like there's no tomorrow. And we should be giving workers we should be supporting people who want to own part of their business, to get them involved in it. We should be supporting it, and we don't. If we do that, by default, if I make a lower salary but I'm getting profits, why do I care?
I agree with you 100%. I think that unions are a diamond in the rough in the future of the rest of this century. They have such a bad reputation that they might have to change the word from unions to being called something else.
Oh, I love that idea.
But personal associations that help you develop in your career, from a high school that makes more sense than this, the crap that the public schools are passing out, that's more useful in terms of AI or robotics than whatever it is the archdiocese is passing out. And I'm a big fan of Catholic schools. Don't mishear me. They're a good bang for the buck. But what we now call a union, but some sort of professional association that can help make the transition from a very competitive high school education to, whether you call it an internship or an apprenticeship,
whichever,
right? Or some sort of developmentally oriented professional experience, and then into the workplace. I really believe that that is the wave of the future. This idea that education should be disjointed from your professional experience is an unfortunate circumstance, an unfortunate casualty of government schools, right?
Yes, agreed.
We managed to keep socialism at bay. We don't allow the government to control most of our businesses directly. And so we've managed to separate the business world from education, but that hasn't always served us very well. Once we get the government out of secondary education, we can see the professional associations that create that connective tissue that I think is really going to serve us much better.
It looks like Mummy Badgers agree with you. He says, I think we're about to circle back on guilds, but with a futuristic.
That's exactly the right word. I couldn't come up with it, but yeah, and we're not talking lollipops here. We're talking AI.
Yes. Peace Logic became a member for 2 months. Thank you, Peace. See, he knows. He says, if electricity becomes close to zero, then old ideas like war and left go away. How close are we to a breakthrough in energy? I think everyone talks about that, Mike. You hear this concept. We're going to bring energy down, make it cheap, blah. We hear it constantly, but I haven't seen a plan yet. It sounds great. I love the sound of it. It feels good. My feels are way up on this one, but what are we doing here?
I think we're a long ways away chronologically. I think technologically we're closer than we are chronologically, and that's for a couple of different reasons. One, of course, is the regulatory environment has to change. It's very fashionable these days to say that we cannot blame the regulatory environment for the lack of development in nuclear. I think that I don't believe that. I still blame the regulatory environment because it has driven a lot of our technological development offshore. And I don't have a problem with bringing a Dutch company or a French company in to build a nuclear reactor, but we're going to have to do a lot of that before we get our own industry on its feet. We need to get good at fission and fusion. The technology is just around the corner. That will happen. It's going to take some time. And then the other thing that's going to slow us down is that our appetite for energy is also going through the roof. So as we bring on this enormous capacity, from the standpoint of today, it looks like, oh my God, we're going to have so much capacity, it's going to be virtually free. Well, wait till you see our appetite. It's going to make sure it doesn't go, down to when Microsoft is building its own reactors, the appetite is serious. And that's
speaking of appetite,
where we are.
Ryan says, Larry's making me hungry for KFC. KFC is delicious. I'm just saying it's tasty chicken. I mean, if you like fried chicken, and most people like fried chicken, it is good chicken. Some people
Of
like
course it is.
Popeyes better, but I happen to like
No, no,
KFC
no, no.
better.
Popeyes is a pretender.
There we go. See, now we got it down. That's it. We got it down right there, 100%. I do want to bring up another piece if I could. Hold on. I thought it was an interesting piece. I got to find it now. I got to find one more comment I wanted to bring up here. And now, of course, I can't find it. All right. I'm a liar. No, here it is. Michael says, military is our best trade school program, to be honest. And I think right now it's true. Yeah.
I think that's true. I think that's unfortunate, by the way.
Yep.
You know, I think that says more about our industrial base capability to play a role in education.
Yes.
But it is true. You know, if a young young man were to ask my advice today, I would say the same thing as I said 20 years ago, which you should be considering the military, but make sure you get yourself into a program in which you can learn a technologically based skill.
I got to tell you, clearly I have spent time in the military. So yes, I remember there's a reason people wonder why I did 7 years in the Marine Corps. Like 7 years is kind of weird. It is kind of weird. Most people do like 4, like 20, right? Very few do like 7, right? I did 7. Why?
Right.
Because my first 3 years, to your point, I joined when I was 17. So my first 3 or 4 years, I had a great time, but I was on the ground side. I could charge a building. I could lead a squad. I could call in fire. I could blow stuff up, right? I could do all that stuff.
And why wouldn't you?
Yes. Well, this is a true story. I was 21 now thinking, should I get out? What should I do? And this is many years ago when we had magazines. So I literally thought, well, what could I do? What skill set do I have? And I thought there was literally a civil war going on in Angola at that time. And I was considering becoming a mercenary trainer. So I bought the old Soldier of Fortune magazine, which used to be a magazine.
Absolutely.
I bought it and I was looking for, and it was literally job applications. I can go there. And I was like, I can make some cash. I was 21 in the Marine, so I didn't fear death at all. I thought I'm immortal. I'll live forever.
Right. And besides, you'd be a trainer. You wouldn't be at the front line.
Yeah, so it'd be fine. So I thought about going to do that because I knew how to do all those things. I was a staff sergeant. At that point, I was a sergeant. I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. So of course I could do it, right? So I thought, yeah. And I actually thought about it. Then I realized to myself, okay, great. I go do that for 3 years or whatever. I forgot what the year, whatever it was. Now I'll come back and still have no skill set. I'll have some money, and a lot of cool stories to tell all the chicks, but that's all I'll have. I will not have any skill set. So I went back for the next 4 years, a 3-year tour. So that's why I did 7 years. And during a 3-year tour, I became a surveyor. I went to intelligence school and I got my college degree. So I did exactly what you were saying. I should have done the first 4. I didn't. I was too busy having fun. And then I did the second year. So yes. That's a long way of saying, yes, you're right, Mike.
And the ROTC is another vehicle for that for a lot of folks. Where the government can help pay for your education, help guide you a little bit, and you're making a commitment, but at the same time getting an education. So
by the way, that is the picture of my artillery unit that I was in.
I love that.
That's still those are my 2 M1908s, 155 millimeter guns that we had in my artillery unit that I was part of. So yes, it's still there. So
I'm glad you were in. I'm glad you're out.
Me too on both parts. Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dave says, Larry and Mike, that's true about the strong man taking over. Hitler voted in. Lenin, he had the guns and rejected election results. Mussolini voted in. They actually weren't literally voted in, to be clear. They were, to Mike's point, they were actually invited by those who were voted in. In other words, when it comes to
a technical matter,
correct. Yes. As
it wasn't retail voting, but
correct. Yes. Yeah. So, but yes, absolutely. It's a very valid point. I think that's very important. So
but if it happened today, it's nothing that we could complain about regarding their democratic institution. You know, we might complain about who it is that they brought to power, but you'd have a real hard time saying that's a process that we can't tolerate in our allies.
Well, I also want to say what you mentioned about democracy and the worries that I have. And this is the thing. if you go back a couple years ago, there were a bunch of people always saying this. They would say, we want people to be democracies because democracies don't war on each other. That's a lie. First off, the one I can remember is our Civil War, two democracies warring against each other.
Yep.
But I'll go even further. Nazi Germany was a democracy.
Of course it was.
Imperial Japan was a democracy.
Yep.
They were just broken democracies with people, to your exact point, Mike, who were in trouble and begged for the democracy to become a dictatorship. And it did. Yep. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about all that. It's extremely worrisome. I think there's an educational component. I think that there's a big economic component. But we need to dodge these bullets out there regarding debt bringing down one of these governments, because tripping into a recession creates the hotbed in which this bullshit grows.
Yes. So before we wrap this up, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to bring up? And before you even go there, guys, please, if you like what we're saying, click that like button. I know I've been bugging you about it because it works. It matters. If you don't do it, it's because you hate us. And because you hate America, that's why you hate America. Please stop hating America. So please do that. Click the like button.
Think of the children.
Think of the children. And what about the children, you horrible people? Click the like button already. Also, you can follow Mike on Twitter or X at MikeTermott _. His website, by the way, is in the description on both YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook if you want to check his website.
MikeTermott.com. It's not that complicated.
That's correct. It is Mike Termott, the future. That is what he is. You can check that out if you want to. Please do so. But did I miss something, Mike? Should we be talking about something? Did I
Those are the big
somewhere?
topics. We could spend a week, and I'm sure we will, in pieces over the next few years. There's a lot to worry about. I think that the one thing that we haven't talked about that deserves several hours, and so I don't mean to hijack in this weird direction. We haven't talked about President Trump per se, and I think that that's probably okay. But there is a wild card here, right? Because he has so much control over our government policy, more than most presidents.
Yep, true.
Willingness to wield that power that's greater than most presidents. And a willingness to make changes that most presidents haven't made in the past. Now,
also true.
A significant amount of this does align with the stuff that we wanted, right?
True.
We wanted to challenge the idea of NATO and to challenge the idea of foreign aid and challenge the idea of government bureaucracy making decisions as though it were another branch of government all on its own. Challenge the idea of allowing spending to just propagate willy-nilly. Challenge the idea that you couldn't do anything to improve our control over illegal immigration, that there was no compromise there, like a lot of us said that there was. Now, I do wish that he were more vociferous about being pro-legal immigration. So there's a lot of stuff, that we resent as libertarians. We wish he would do things better, smarter, in more libertarian fashion. I do think he's got a communications problem. I wish that he would signal where he wants to go with negotiations in Israel, in Ukraine, with tariffs. I wish that he hadn't said what he said about Greenland, about Panama, about Canada. There was a lot of things he said that I think that we would have done differently. And so I think that what I would like to do is just to wrap up by saying I would invite everyone not to view all of these things so much as a matter of Trump himself. It's not a matter of Trump is good, Trump is bad, he makes me crazy. It's really a matter of this policy, that policy.
I agree completely.
Some of this stuff is going to help us in the long run and drive us crazy in the short run. And some of it is going to please us in the short run and drive us crazy in the long run. And we may not know for sure how all this is going to play out.
Yeah.
I would have said the same thing
Right.
about
Well,
Joe Biden, and that was a different kettle of fish. There was a whole lot of stuff that just drove us crazy all the time because he's such a
yep.
statist. And
Well,
here is just a
you
lot up in the air, and I think we're going to have to be patient. That doesn't mean, we shouldn't be critical, but we're going to have to be a little bit patient and not get on each other's nerves.
yes.
If you disagree with this Republican or that Libertarian, that's okay, but hold your breath for 5 minutes because things change pretty quick.
I've been trying on this show to give Trump credit where credit is due and show my fear when I have fear. I've been trying to do both to the best of my ability. But you made Phil angry. Phil said, don't say his name. Ryan said, Phil, the T word. And then Phil said, yes, Ryan, stay out of the T zone. Yeah, so yes, they didn't want you to say his name, but you did. Ryan's like, let's Phil stay away from the T drizzle tonight, but that's okay. But the thing is, those have been my people have been watching for so long. Trump has been saying so many things doing so much. I've been talking about him for like almost every other day for like weeks, but just recently, these last 3 days, I haven't talked about him at all, like 3 days in a row. Right. So they're like, oh my God, no Trump stuff. So they were like, yay, no Trump stuff. Because he's been doing so much stuff. I can't not talk about it. But yeah, I have kind of backed off. Let me grab a couple super chats real fast. Duke says, thank you for $2. He says, the Second Amendment is our only hope against tyranny. Yes, but I hope we don't have to use it.
Well said.
Yes. Phil, thank you for becoming a member for 2 months. I don't know what this is. I think they mean Mike. They keep calling you Matt. I don't know why they keep calling you Matt. What does Mike think about a cheese coin using Cheese Mountain in Missouri as currency specie?
I'm afraid I would eat the product and it would undermine my own financial position.
There we go.
I would take delivery.
There we go. Peace, Laz. Thank you for the $10. I meant theft. Oh, that's what he meant. We said theft. Okay, yes. I kind of feel like we already have the knowledge for close to zero energy cost, but can't release it publicly because of the consequences crashing the oil marketplace. I think it means.
I don't think it's so much a conspiracy as much as it is we're being held back because there's only there is not an infinite amount of investment capital, and a lot of it is being devoted to short-term the next 10 years, right? Short-term needs for fossil fuels. It's not irrational. It might be short-term thinking, but it's not completely irrational. I wouldn't put it quite in the conspiracy theory category as much as I would say we need some very, very heavy hitters with a very long-term view. And we don't have that as much yet as we need.
And I think the other issue here I would add is if we have to be, to your point, we have to signal that we actually want it so that energy companies can go, oh, that's the future? Fine. The energy companies don't care if they sell oil. They just want to sell energy to make money. They don't care.
As long as they got money coming in, it doesn't matter what's going out.
They don't care. So
if
if we signal, like your point that you had earlier with the communication piece, if we signal it earlier with good communication, hey, we want to go there, the oil companies are great. That's where we're going.
And that's what we need from the administration. I won't use the T word, but we need that from the administration.
Yes. Kay's-John says, yikes, heady stuff tonight. Between Larry, Mike, and the chat combos feel like Norm from Cheers. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and I'm wearing milk-bone underwear.
Absolutely. Woof, woof. Yes. It's a dog-eat-dog world.
Yes. And Mike, if you want to afterwards, if you go through the chat, there's a lot of back and forth conversations in the chat tonight.
I'm sure.
You can enjoy if you want to go on, and often at the end, I'll answer some questions here. If you want to go back and see it, it might be interesting for you to do so. Anyway, I will let you run, Mike. I appreciate you giving me all the time you gave me. Thank you so much. Guys, this is what I want you to do. I want you to, in the chat, after we're done, I want you to go back in the chat, and I want you to put a specific question for Mike in the chat. Whatever you want, put a specific question for Mike in the chat, afterwards. I
I
don't care
probably won't see it tonight, but I will see it tomorrow.
There we go. Perfect. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for all your time this evening. I will be back on
And
tomorrow
I'll
at 7
address as
p.m.
much as I can on X.
There we go. I'll be back on tomorrow at 7 with I'm not sure, it might be Trump, I don't know. But I will also be back on at 7 on Thursday with an author who I think you'll enjoy. So I have another guest on Thursday. I will see you all very soon.